This next question here, it's stating what is the quadratic equation and how do you derive the quadratic equation here? So this one's a bit trickier and in terms of deriving the solution, but I'll kind of walk you through the math as to how you would figure out this problem here, or how you would basically derive this problem, because your derivations usually take quite a bit of time. So I would and you're not really supposed to know derivations for mathematics, to be honest. If you're looking at high school math, you don't really, not a lot of teachers will ask you how to derive the quadratic equation here. But asking us what is the quadratic equation, well, I know the quadratic equation, right? Something you probably should memorize, given in a grade probably 10 context, end of algebra 1 and beginning of algebra 2. So I know the quadratic equation is simply just x here equals, because I'm solving for x, right? So depending on, and this is a quadratic equation, so it's simply ax squared plus bx plus c, right? It's some sort of, this is a general formula or equation for a quadratic function. And then there, if I want to solve for x here, x would equal plus or minus, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a here. So this here is my quadratic formula for quadratic equation for this formula here, and then it's telling us how do you derive the quadratic. How do you get from this general equation to here? So in this case, just to save me some time, I'm going to actually just look at the solution, and I'll show you in terms of mathematics what they're doing here, and I'll break this question down here. So if I have ax squared plus bx plus c, what they're doing first is they're dividing everything by a. And this here equals 0, right? Because it's a quadratic function here. So I'm dividing everything by a here to get this first step here. So let me just copy down what they're doing here. So if I'm dividing everything by a, right? So I have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. I'm dividing everything by a. So I'm dividing this entire function by a here, this left side here, this left side here. Again, the right side doesn't mean anything, it still equals 0, right? But then this left side is going to change. I have x squared plus bx over a plus c over a here. And then what they're doing here is they're adding and subtracting the square of the half of the coefficient of x here. So what does that mean? Well, that means that they are basically trying to complete the square. So they're thinking of what they're doing here is they're adding b over 2a squared minus b over 2a squared, right? So they're simply just trying to expand this so they get some type of perfect square trinomial for these two guys here. So let me write this down here. So x squared plus bx over a plus, and then I have b over 2a squared minus b over 2a squared plus ca equals 0. And then, as you can see here, what I can do now is I can group these guys here, right? I can group these guys here because this is a perfect square trinomial, right? So I can say here that this is simply just x plus b over 2a squared, right? Which equals, and then I'm basically moving everything to the other side here. So I'm gonna have positive b squared over a minus c over a here. And then now what I'm doing here is what they did here was they expanded this bracket here. So I have x plus b over 2a squared equals b squared is b squared, 2a squared is 4a squared minus ca. And then what they're doing here is they're taking the square root of both sides, right? Because they're now isolating for this x value here. So we're going to square root both sides. So I get x plus b over 2a equals the square root of b squared over 4a squared minus ca here. So this here would give me the square root of both sides. Yeah, so it's square root of both sides, and this is plus or minus, right? Every time I take a square root, it's plus or minus here. And then what I can do is I can simply subtract BA from both sides. I can subtract this guy to both sides, right? So I'm leaving x by itself, right? So x here is going to equal, this is now negative b over 2a. I'm moving this to the other side, right? To the right side here. And it's going to equal, this is plus or minus the square root of b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. And then finally, I can clean this solution up by saying that, this entire thing, what they're doing here is they basically just combined both these terms here, right? So they have here x would equal, this is still negative b all over 2a, but what they have here is they combine this these guys into the in the square root term, right? So they put it all into one common denominator, which is 4a here. So this is simply just plus or minus. This here is b squared minus 4ac all over 4a. And as you can see, what we can do here is we can just simply cancel out one of the 2a's here. So these cancel out here. So you have x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and it's all over 2a here, because this here is going to be all over 2a here. So this here is how you derive the quadratic equation. Again, very, very long and very, very tedious, but that is basically what they're doing on this in this logic here. So this solution here is correct. Good analysis here. And again, derivations are quite hard actually. So even I'm not that comfortable with derivations, just because it's not really required until kind of proofs and upper level mathematics.